Thank you for tuning in for another episode of the Finance Bible podcast.
Before you get into it, please note that nothing in this podcast should ever be taken as personal financial advice.
And if you are seeking financial advice,
please reach out to us as we can direct you to many individuals in the industry.
thank you for joining again for another brilliant episode of the Finance Bible podcast. Today we're talking about a very recent study into millionaires. For all our listeners, you know that we're rabid fans of The Millionaire Next Door. Great book. This is kind of refreshing those statistics.
Yeah, so basically this episode we've kind of handpicked all the best statistics which are relevant to today's environment, the money-making environment for millionaires out there. So just to give everyone a better understanding of, anyone can become a millionaire. You just have to plan accordingly and, invest your time, your money the right way and spend below your means, which we'll get into in a second. But yeah, it just shows that anyone out there can become a millionaire. So first things first, when it comes to saving money, investing money, wanting to save for, a property or whatever you have in mind, we might have to go back to that red dress. Haven't been there for a while. How millionaires tend to spend their money is a very, very, very obvious factor first up. So they all live on less than what they make. So say you get a paycheck on every Friday and you go out Friday night and Saturday night and you spend 80% of your paycheck. Well, tough luck. Now you've only got 20% left over to save, or you might have bills, you might have rent to pay. So all of a sudden, you're actually losing money after that paycheck because you haven't put any aside, you haven't saved any, you've just blown it off. So this is an example of spending more than what you make. And the millionaires in today's world and the last 50 years, they do the opposite. They spend less than what they make.
Before we dive too far into all the fun statistics that our listeners will know you and I love, we love statistics.
Oh.
I've actually noticed that in terms of wealth, majority of people are doing better on lower incomes than they are on higher incomes, or people who have come from virtually nothing are doing better than people who have come from money. So, for example, we meet a lot of people today who are on $500,000 salary. They think they're doing really well. They spend everything they earn. They're rich on paper. They've got nothing. We meet a lot of people who are on 80 grand a year. They save a lot. They invest a lot. They're doing really well. If you go to famous examples, you already know your boy's coming in. Mr. Worldwide checking in for the remix. Pitbull, first generation, Cuba to America, created everything. Millionaire, self-made, self-paid. Oprah Winfrey, another good example. I don't need to talk about her. We all know who she is. They're two...
LeBron James.
LeBron.
The majority of millionaires out there, or the well-known millionaires in the world today, are first-generation millionaires who've grinded in the early years. Some may be athletes, some may be actually investing, like Warren Buffett, for example. He's a big one. As a lot of people probably aware, massive in shares and stocks. That's where his forte is. But a lot of people do it on their own whim and not rely on an inheritance or to be handed down to them.
Yeah, so before we move on to the stats, basically, if you are someone who's not on six figures, who's not coming from money, guess what? Statistically speaking, and through our experience, you're probably more likely to end up in a better position than majority of other people.
Yeah, because pretty insane fact, only 31% of millionaires have averaged $100,000 or have been on six-figure income. So that just shows only 1/3 never made it to six figures.
There you go. If 70% of millionaires aren't even earning six figures, then guess what? If you're not on six figures, you can easily do it.
And if you are on six figures, happy days, you have an advantage. Make sure to still invest, even dollar cost average, every month, every week, every fortnight, whatever it may be. But there's a lot of ways you can do it.
One of my favorite statistics, and this is all based on an American research done recently from Ramsey Solutions, that basically wanted to reproduce the Millionaire Next Door statistics in today's world. Private school, public school, huge debate. In America, you think it would be more of a problem than it is in Australia, as in the education system over there versus the Australian education system is vastly different in terms of cost and effectiveness and all of that. Over there, only 38% of millionaires in this particular study went to private schools, not public. So 62% of the millionaires in America surveyed were actually from public schools.
It's a pretty insane statistic, that, because a lot of people and parents and young families all strive to put their kids in private schools. Obviously, it has its pros, has its cons, as does everything. But when individuals out there judge someone differently from going to a public school just because they didn't go to a private school, as you can see with the statistics, it doesn't matter at all. Generally, you get a pretty similar education. Maybe the extracurricular activities are a bit different around the school, different camps, etc. But no, it doesn't matter. Everyone gets dealt the same cards. It's just how you play them. You might be a smarter kid at a public school or a dumb kid I can't say dumb kid. Just how you play them. It's in your hands. It doesn't matter where you've been educated. It matters how, you educate yourself as well. So self-education, for myself, it's been quite big, and for yourself as well, reading all these finance books, surfing the web, just familiarizing ourselves with the industry and investing from a younger age. And you did that with getting a property through stocks, which is unreal. But yeah, it's pretty important to see that public versus private generally doesn't have a big gap.
This is one of my favourite debates, actually. I find it exciting. It's funny. Disclaimer, I'm public, Oscar's private. We get along, which is funny, because generally speaking, they don't.
Best of both worlds.
Yeah, we are. But I think if you put one kid in both situations, like if you could replicate me and put me in private or public, and replicate Oscar and put him in private or public, the outcome would probably be similar.
Definitely.
I think the major difference you get with private is networking.
Yeah, 100% networking. So you have mates whose dads owns these companies, and they might say, when you finish school and you're 12, you can come out and work for our family business, or we'll set you up, give you a good income. That's probably the only difference.
Yeah, and I think that comes down to the person there as well. If you don't want to network, or you don't know how to, or you don't have the ambition, then you may as well have gone to public.
But with saying that, public schooling is, I'm sure there's still a lot of networking to be done.
Oh, there is.
It's not saying there's no networking at public schools, because there is everywhere you go. But that's a big fact, and that's a big statistic, which is extremely important for, like we said, younger parents or young families who are tossing up that decision now. You don't have to put your kids in private schools, especially if you can't afford it at the moment. And
from a behavioural perspective too, if I went to a private school, I probably would have been kicked out.
Mate, you'd be gone.
So we're probably glad I was in the public sector there.
You'd be gone. Going back to that, spending less than what you make. So 94% of millionaires have said that they live on less than what they make. So over time, they can grow their pile of cash, investments, assets. So that's a massive, massive factor, because the only way to beat inflation at the moment, the price of iceberg lettuce is insane at the moment. The price for petrol, everything is insane.
$8 for a lettuce that not many people actually enjoy. That was known as, like, literally, when I grew up, the budget, lettuce.
I'll smash spinach.
Yeah, I love
spinach. Is the way to go.
Spinach and kale.
Oh, how good. But the only way to beat inflation is literally to put your money to work over time. As we said in the last couple of episodes, holding it in cash, you are losing money every single day. But with that, when you get paid, we generally say save a portion of your pay to put towards savings, such as around 25%, and use the rest of your pay for investing. If you have a few bills you might have to pay, but general rule of thumb, 25 for saving and the rest, invest that. And that's how you are going to get the upper hand, because time is on your side with investing. That's how it generally works. If you're in your early 20s, you could probably invest as much as $94 a month and you'd be a millionaire. when you retire. If you're starting a little bit later in your 30s or 40s, generally it doesn't really matter. As long as you're consistent, you might put a large sum in of 10 grand to start with or whatever it may be. But consistency is key when it comes to investing. At the moment, it's a good time to invest with the Australian shares right now.
International too.
Yeah, me personally, as we've mentioned, I'm out of the stock market just because I'm saving up for a deposit. So I don't want to afford the risk. But if I wasn't saving up for a deposit, I'd be throwing a lot of my money into some very undervalued shares right now.
Just going back to that 25% of income going to saving that you were talking about before, an interesting calculation with that. Let's say, firstly, let's figure out how much you need to save or invest per week or per month to become a millionaire. So very basic, very easy. Get on Money Smart, compound interest calculator, really good calculator. It's done by the government. Basically, if you want to be a millionaire in 35 years' time, as in have $1 million, then how do you do it? It's pretty simple, actually, over 35 years. So you could be 25 wanting to be a millionaire at 60. You could be 20 wanting to be a millionaire at 55. You could even be 15 working at Macca's and want to get there at 40.
Well, with Money Smart, you can literally just play with the numbers. So if you want to be a millionaire in 10 years, shows you how much you need to put in per month or week.
If you were trying to be a millionaire in 35 years, then if you do a deposit initially of $5,000 and then regularly deposit per month $301 with a return of 9%, which is about the average for shares, etc., then you get to about $1 million in 35 years. The fun thing is, if you take 25% of your income, like we do ourselves, or try to do ourselves, I should say, we don't always, things come up.
Sometimes the golden sheaf comes into the equation.
It does. If we say you're on, what's a fairly reasonable wage, 65 grand, not too low, not too high, it's pretty accurate for a majority of people out there. If you're on 65 grand, take into account a little bit of tax and all of that kind of stuff. If you're saving about 25% of your wage per week, on a monthly basis, you should be able to save or put away about $1,100, about 13 grand per year. Doing that on the same calculation, you get to millionaire status after 23 years. The fun thing is, if you keep it going for the 35 years, then you get to a multi-millionaire status of about $3.35 million. So on a 65 grand income, if you save about 20 to 25% of your income after tax, invest it, you can still build up a portfolio of a good 3.3 million in 35 years. Any 25-year-old out there that wants to retire at 60, they're earning that kind of money. Boom, there you go, 3.3 million. If you've dropped out of school early, you've gone to the mines to become a tradie, anything like that, 20 years old, you're on 60 grand a year, then guess what? You've got the potential to do it over 40 years and get to about 5.3 million. So that extra 5 years adds a whole $2 million due to compound interest. There's a fun fact.
Massive fun fact. Just keeps coming. Another fun fact, which is extremely, extremely good, especially for you and I at the moment with a bit of bonds for the new property getting thrown on this type of card, is credit cards. The statistic or the research that was undertaken show that nearly 3/4 of millionaires have never carried a credit card debt in their life. So perhaps they might have carried $1,000 or $2,000 here or there, but generally speaking, nothing more than that limit throughout their whole life. The reason we want to steer clear from credit cards is the high interest debt. We want interest to be working for us, like compound interest, like we just spoke about with investing $1,100 a month. So that interest is working for us to become a millionaire. With credit cards, the amount you owe, you get charged interest on that. So that interest is working against you. And we definitely don't want that to happen to any of us, because we've had a bond, like we spoke before. We put that on the credit card just for the time. And we even got charged a bit of interest on that, about $100. Still not too bad, but generally speaking, if you had a large credit card debt and some interest on that, you'd be thinking quite a bit of money, unfortunately.
That $100 a month over 4 years could turn into 650 grand if we weren't spending it on interest and investing it.
Yeah, it's not what you want. So the interest getting added onto your credit card, it's actually typically taking away money from you that you could be investing. like the $100 regular deposit, which Zeke just mentioned then. So we need to get rid of credit cards. If you have a credit card, if you have enough in your savings to pay it off, I recommend doing that and then cutting off your credit card. If you have a credit card generally just for frequent flyer points, which a lot of people out there do, and you can pay it off monthly back down to zero, happy days, continue to do that. But if you're one of those people struggling to make repayments and you're actually generally in debt and the interest keeps drowning you, put it in the fire, just burn it.
Give it the snip.
Just give it the snip, Dr. Snip.
Onto the self-made, self-paid millionaires that used to pay around the world. Now they're around the world getting paid.
Mate, you and your Pitbull lyrics, you just, like, we're having a general conversation and you just whip out a lyric from a song. I love it.
Well, he's the best. As he says
Same with Rodrigo, you've been doing that quite a bit.
Oh, Rodrigo's good. And Bieber.
One spoon for two.
Yep. Yeah, well, as he says, first we make the sandwich, then we own the restaurant. First we shine the shoes, then we own the shoe shop. First we clean the house, then we own every house in the block. Not bad for some immigrants, because he was an immigrant. And that's his story. He did that. He's just a legend.
And he's self-made.
He is self-made.
Which leads you to the next statistic.
Self-made, self-paid millionaire. 79% of millionaires are self-made, including Pitt himself.
And what that means is anyone out there can do it. Obviously, generational wealth is a thing out there, and some families may pass down the wealth and automatically overnight you are a millionaire. But 21% of millionaires have received some inheritance over time, but only 3% of those millionaires received inheritance over $1 million worth. So basically, it is showing that the majority did make it on their own. And the 3% who received $1 million overall in inheritance, that is generational wealth. So it just gives a good indication, because when people say someone's a millionaire or they want to be a millionaire, what goes on through their mind is basically, I can never do it. I don't have, you might not have a wealthy family, or you might have not grown up in the nicest area. So generally you're thinking, I can't do it. But these statistics show that anyone out there can do it if they have a investment plan, if their head's screwed on, if they're serious about making it and stopping work. Because at the end of the day, what we want to reach, and our listeners out there, where we want to help you, is the end goal is that our investments pay us as much as our day job is paying, or even more. So then we can stop doing that 9 to 5, because no one wants to do a 9 to 5. I can picture everyone sitting at their desks, just thinking about going on a holiday, having income coming through. And generally the only way you can do that is through investing or being an entrepreneur and having your own company. But investing is an easy way to do it.
That statistic of inheritance and self-made kind of go hand in hand. My favorite thing about that is, this is why America is called the land of opportunity. You've got 80% or 79% first generation self-made millionaires, basically. The huge argument we find, and in America specifically at the moment, is that if you don't have generational wealth, you're pretty well screwed.
Yeah.
It's actually the complete opposite. If you've got generational wealth, it's actually statistically proven you're going to do worse than someone who doesn't.
Because you're comfortable.
And that's in America, where apparently it's a lot more advantageous to have wealth and generational wealth, that is, and you're disadvantaged if you don't. In Australia, we're pretty, in terms of equality and equity and all of that kind of stuff, we're pretty reasonable, education and everything. So if that's the statistic in America, imagine what you could do in Australia.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that with generational wealth and how, generally speaking, they're worse off. And leading on to another statistic, we are literally throwing everyone statistics left, right, and centre today. So I hope everyone's in the mood for it. But 8 out of 10 millionaires came from middle to low income earning families.
Let that dawn on you.
It's a good old 5-second pause. So only 2% of millionaires have come from upper income families, which shows you, it's basically just confirming your point, Zeke. might sound silly to say, but you generally are worse off having generational wealth. Like, obviously it's nice to have, but the reason being is, in your mind, you're always saying, oh, I'm fine. Like, I don't need to do anything. I can relax. I can go away. Like, I'm set. If you're from a middle to low income earning household, over time, you're hungry. You want to make an impact. You want to be that first millionaire in your family. You want to have, you want to set up your family. You want to make sure that, you made it. So you're hungry, you're motivated, you want to make as much money as you can. And that's where that percentage comes into it all.
We both know that I'm a big fan of studying a bit of psychology in my spare time. What I've noticed, and this is my personal opinion, I'm not qualified at all, probably never will be in terms of psychology. I have no intention of it. Because everything is person specific. Like you can't have an average in psychology, because I could do something psychologically with Oscar and then do it with someone from Japan, and there'll be completely different results. There's no correlation whatsoever. It is the most random thing in the world. But generally speaking, from a psychology point of view, the reason that I believe people who are coming from lower families and that they've seen the struggle, they've had the struggle, they don't want it. They're done with it. The people in the higher position haven't ever had to deal with that. Everything's kind of been, I'm not going to say handed to them. Well, you can say handed to them if you want. Some will have it handed to them, some won't, but they'll have it a lot easier. They won't feel the hustle. They won't feel the rat race. They don't care for it. They haven't experienced it. They've got nothing to really go, I'm really motivated to get out of this situation.
Yeah, but with saying that, there's probably, as the statistics shown, there are a few people who do have generational wealth who are also hungry and want to make a name for themselves and not just rely on their family's funds, which is awesome. Like
Trumpalicious.
Trumpalicious.
That's him. In terms of financial capacity, he is a genius.
Other things questionable, but we're not a political podcast.
We're not at all.
So we're going to definitely steer clear from that before we get some hate mail. But
yeah, he's actually, in terms of entrepreneurial training and stuff like that, he's done really good stuff. And him and Robert Kiyosaki get along really well.
Mates, yeah.
They've done good stuff together.
A few investments in Hawaii, and that leads to property as well, because we've been talking a lot about shares and stocks and investing in companies, but we also need to talk about property, because real estate is, a lot of millionaires out there have used real estate to propel their asset base and to increase their net income. So real estate is a big thing, a big part of it all, especially right now with the rising housing prices. So if you bought 5 years ago or even last year, in Australia, that is. In America, quite similar. It is increasing. Rates have jumped across US and Australia. So if an individual took advantage of that and realized when to purchase a property maybe a few years ago, they could perhaps made $1 million off that property. Robert Kiyosaki, he's massively into property investing. You may have read his book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. If you haven't, highly recommend it. That's where it was my first real finance book, property book ever. And that's where literally I got hooked. So he has, it sounds ridiculous. So he owns 3 homes himself, and he has 8,000 rental properties. 8,000.
Jeez.
Which is literally insane. So he will never have to work another day in his life. Get the book. It shows you his journey, shows you his mindset. He was struggling in his early 20s. I think he actually started investing when he was maybe 30. Quit his job. He had a big decision with his partner. They were struggling a lot, living on not much money at all. And then all of a sudden just started using leverage with banks, investing in property, and here he is today. Remarkable.
Another funny stat when we're talking about property and millionaires and that, in the US, there's a good article published on it from 2021 from real estate investor Goddesses. 90% of millionaires in America have done so utilizing investment property.
Yeah, it's insane.
So 10% have done it without property. Hats off to them. 90% have done it utilizing property to leverage and create that wealth accelerating technique. So if you're looking to get there, 90% of them have done it with property. So that's a ripper statistic to take away from today.
Yeah. And superannuation as well, because what we're talking about is generally personal investing in property and shares. But the good thing about being in Australia and in America, generally more for Australia for this episode, is your superannuation and investing in your super. So with all the industry funds out there at the moment, Hostplus, Aware Super, Australian Super, Suncorp, whatever you may be in, they invest your funds for you. But say you have a self-managed super fund where you do it yourself, you can also look at investing in property and shares. So 8 out of 10 millionaires have invested within their superannuation. Extremely important. And they've, might have invested in low-cost mutual funds or index funds and property. Property is a big part of it all.
Applies for every country. For our Spanish listeners, our European listeners like Germany or England, our American listeners. America, you've got the 401k, the Roth IRA. Germany, England, all of that, you've got your pension funds and that kind of stuff. And here we've got superannuation. So regardless of where you are, that's a big contributor. So 80% of millionaires contribute and invest excess, basically more than the required, into their Roth IRA, 401k, super, pension account, all of that. So let that speak for itself. Finally, and we'll look to wrap it up because we're getting on the statistic band pretty hard here.
We literally could go all day.
I could talk all day about statistics. We might do one on statistics only.
Just no content, just smash out stats.
3/4, so 75% of the millionaires surveyed regularly did consistent investing over a long time, and that is the reason, or one of the sole reasons they equate to their success. So they didn't just do a one-off investment, get lucky. They were consistently dollar cost averaging over time, or consistently investing in property, or consistently doing it across a range of things. Their super, Roth IRA, property, shares, crypto, fixed interest,
whatever they're more knowledgeable about, comfortable with, find that thing for you. So you may be into the cryptocurrency market and you feel more comfortable investing in that area because you know the area, or the property, or stocks. So find your area and regularly contribute with investment funds and get your plan sorted, because anyone can make it, as you've learnt in this as you've learnt in half an hour of this podcast. Anyone can make it. Take us out with a motivational lyric from one of his favourite men in the world, Pitbull.
A bit of inspiration before you go, as Oscar said. I recommend everyone get out there, listen to Can't Have by Pitbull and Stephen Clark. Basically, it's about what he thought he couldn't have. It's about where he came from, where he is. He's talking about seeing Central Park from his hotel room, and it's got him thinking about the crazy things he used to do. But anyway, every verse in there, very inspirational. I'll give you one. It was all a dream, now I wake up and live it, thinking that the sky was the limit, till I figured out there's footprints on the moon. Now I'm like, get out of the way, bitch, move. So he's heading for the moon. He used to think the stars were the limit.
So because of that, we're going to make this podcast explicit, because you said that.
Well, sometimes you've got to throw out a little bitch in there.
Righto, we'll leave it there. As always, if you have any questions, shoot us through a message on Instagram, Twitter, or LinkedIn. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, don't be afraid. Click that review button, give us 5 stars, and write your thoughts.
In fact, I'm almost confident that if you don't click that 5-star, it's because you are afraid. So there's a challenge. Don't be afraid. Go for it. Sometimes you got to take a leap of faith on any podcast platform. We'll catch you all next week.